Humans have an overwhelming need to believe in a higher power. From ancient history, man had always recognized some form of deity as its god. In our present age, every nation on the face of the earth, from the most primitive to the most civilized, believes in and worships some form of supreme being. The idea of having a deity and worshipping it is embedded in human nature so much that there is surely something within man's soul which forces him to do so. And this brings us to religion. Personally, I'm a Christian, but I don't necessarily see it as the supreme religion. Stay with me on this, because if I did, it would mean all other religions are wrong and they would all burn in the pits of hell. And that's not quite how my Bible forces me to think. But really, a large reason for our choices of religion owes itself to the times and locations where we grow up. If my childhood was spent in a predominantly Muslim part of the world, then I most likely would have grown up visiting mosques. I'll have a better understanding and belief in the practice of their faith. So who are we to assume that our practice faith is superior to others? Even those who convert from one religion to the other do so only because somehow, some way, they're exposed to the new faith so much that they become influenced to change. So what happens to the religion that we are in no way exposed to because of location? I digress, because that's not really what I want to talk about, but stay with me on this. It's a bit funny that I moved to the UK a few years ago, and for a country that brought Christianity into my country generations ago, they don't seem to take the religion half as seriously as we do, but that's a story for another day. Religions really have a lot in common. Yes, I see similarities in all religions, and there are a lot. As a matter of fact, I see different religions as multiple paths to the same destination. There are always extremists, and that's just another way that religions are alike. The same religious traditions that affirm that God is compassionate, merciful, and just also include disturbing beliefs that promote religious hatred and intolerance. And sadly, they have provided historical tragedies to the extent that there was once a rationale for an aggressive holy war. Isn't it peculiar that for all our claims of divine guidance and ultimate truth, history is littered with stories of how religion has been used as a tool for unity and a weapon for division? There are several forgotten tales in history, including the Crusades. These were wars waged in the name of reclaiming holy lands from infidels. On one side, Christian knights believed that they were fulfilling God's will, while on the other, Muslim defenders fought with equal passion and intensity, believing that they were protecting their sacred spaces. Both sides claimed divine favor and protection from their supreme beings or creators, and yet the result was over 2 centuries of bloodshed, displacement, and suffering on both sides. Does it not make you wonder how the same concept of a loving God could justify such violence? There are still very much wars backed by religion till this very day, but I choose not to speak about the recent times because of the sensitivity that they carry. The irony is that as much as these conflicts were spiritual, they were often intertwined with politics, economics, and power struggles. Religion became the disguise under which these ambitions were achieved. In more modern history, there was also the division of India in 1947, where Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs, who had lived side by side for centuries, suddenly became enemies just because of a narrative that their religious identities were incompatible. Over 1 million people died and millions more were displaced, all in the name of preserving religious or cultural purity. Yet, in the midst of such division and suffering, religion has also demonstrated its capacity to inspire profound acts of love, compassion, and justice, revealing the brighter side of faith's influence on humanity. Religion has also brought about a lot of good. Take, for instance, the abolition of slavery. Even though we can argue that religion was a tool that was used to drive slavery, but that's a story for another day. Figures like William Wilberforce in Britain and Harriet Tubman in America were deeply motivated by their Christian faith to fight against the dehumanization of others. Similarly, the principles of non-violence that Mahatma Gandhi championed were rooted in his Hindu beliefs, blended with inspiration from Jesus and Jain philosophy. Across history, people of faith have built schools, hospitals, and charities driven by the belief that their Creator calls them to serve humanity, some of which have been accused of doing so for personal financial gains and true exploitation of other believers. You see, these two faces of religion as both a source of division and a guiding force of compassion might be one of its most baffling features. as it's not unique in any one faith. Consider how in Judaism, the teachings of Tikkun Olam emphasize social justice, yet even within this tradition, there are some interpretations that exclude or marginalize others. In Islam, the Quran speaks of mercy and peace, but some factions have twisted its verses to justify acts of terror. Buddhism, often seen as a purely peaceful path, has its own shadows, as seen in the treatment of Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar by those who claim to follow the Buddha's teachings. What I've come to realize is the problem isn't religion itself, it's how we, as people, interpret and apply it. When we bring our biases, fears, and ambitions into these spiritual frameworks, and sometimes we project our worst personalities onto the divine, we place God in our image instead of striving to understand the image of God. I recently thought to myself that since religions are only different paths to the same destination, then maybe the goal isn't to argue over which path is superior. Maybe the goal is to recognize that we're all travelers. Some may walk through deserts, others through forests, some may navigate through busy cities, and others on quiet mountain trails. What matters perhaps is not the path itself, but how we walk it. Do we walk in kindness, humility, and a desire for understanding, or do we trample over others to prove we're on the right track? Even the concept of truth as religions see it might be less about rigid doctrines and more about seeking something greater than ourselves. Sufi poets like Rumi spoke of love as the ultimate connection to the divine, transcending labels of religion. The philosophy of Laozi in Taoism focused on living in harmony with the Tao, the underlying order of the universe, without the need to define or confine it. Ultimately, the greatest challenge isn't that religions differ, it's that we let those differences blind us into the vast common ground we share. Love your neighbor, do unto others as you would have them do to you. Seek justice and walk humbly. These principles echo across scriptures and traditions. Maybe that's the true destination, and the rest are just building blocks that we can use to get there. So, if we accept that no one has the monopoly on truth, perhaps we can begin to appreciate the beauty in diversity. Because at the heart of it, we're all just trying to make sense of the same mysteries. Why are we here? Where are we going? And how should we live in the meantime? Thanks for watching. Peace.